We at Wealth and Millennial want to help inspire, educate, and motivate you to make the best financial decisions possible. With our straightforward, no bullshit approach, we aim to simplify the complex world of personal finance for the millennial mind. A new year always seems to bring with it the promise of growth and change. It's almost as if we compare the flipping of our calendar to the resetting of our computer. It's a time to finally make the changes we've been meaning to for so long. While the common goals of living a happier, healthier, and more active life are all great places to start, they aren't the only areas you can focus on. Using this newfound motivation to tackle some of your financial woes shouldn't be passed up. In this episode, we'll go over how to set achievable financial goals for the year ahead, how to set systems of automation, track your progress along the way, and stay motivated when times get tough. Figure out what you want. The best place to begin is to figure out what it is you want to achieve. You can't reach your destination if you don't know where you're going in the first place. I like to begin this process with a brain dump, which is to sit down with a pen and paper and write down any of your financial goals you could possibly have. Don't edit yourself here. Stay open-minded and just let the ideas flow. We'll take some time to sort them all out in the next section. Having trouble thinking of some ideas? Here are a few to help get the ball rolling. 1. Saving down payment for your first home. 2. Eliminate your student debt. 3. Pay off your credit card debt. 4. Accelerate your mortgage payments. 5. Begin contributing to your retirement fund. And 6. Ramp up your retirement savings. These were just a few ideas I came up with in about 60 seconds. Feel free to use any of these that relate to your situation, or take a few minutes to really dig into what you really want to achieve. Prioritize. Now that you've got a decent collection of ideas, it's time to settle on just a few. Your original brain dump may have netted you 5, 10, or even 15 financial areas you want to improve. The idea of fixing all of your financial issues in 1 year might seem awesome, but it's probably unrealistic. Unless you're bringing in big money, your income will really only allow you to tackle a couple of these at a time. Not to mention the amount of time and effort it would take to accomplish everything. So taking a moment to pick your top 3 or 4 and building a plan around those few will be much more realistic. Besides narrowing your efforts to only a few, you'll also need to consider the order in which you tackle these goals. A great way to do this is to figure out which of your goals is costing you the most money. Credit card debt will cost you an arm and a leg in interest, so something like this should be near the top of your list. If you're having trouble figuring out which goals to settle on, then here's a pretty standard order for most. 1. Establish an emergency fund. 2. Pay off high-interest debts. 3. Invest in your future. Now, this isn't set in stone, but the great thing about this process is that you've got a small emergency fund to tide you over while paying down your debts. You'll pay the least amount of interest by knocking out your high-interest loans first. Then you can double down on your retirement savings. It's important to run your numbers before settling on any financial plan. Obviously, the best plan is the one that will net you the most at the end of the day. So if you've got a relatively low interest loan and are able to get higher returns by investing, then maybe your best bet is to pay the minimum on your loan and double down on your investments. Make a plan. Set dates and deadlines. Now that you know what goals you want to achieve and have them laid out in a chronological order, it's time to establish a plan. Like taking a road trip, you wouldn't just hop in the car and start driving. You'd map everything out, plan destinations to visit along the way, and follow the route that will get you there in the least amount of time. Where are you starting? Before you dig deep into how you're going to achieve these goals, it's important to take a step back and obtain a clear picture of where you are today. What does your financial picture look like? How much money do you have left at the end of every month to go towards these goals? Do you have unsavory spending habits that will keep you from accomplishing them? The first place to start when it comes to personal finance is to establish a budget. Understanding how much money you make compared to how much you spend will let you know exactly how quickly each of your goals can be achieved. This is like the starting point of your road trip. You can't accurately map a route if you don't know where you're starting. Smart goal setting. Now take a minute to look back at your goals and make sure that each of them is a SMART goal. The acronym stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So if your original goal was to pay off your visa, you could change it slightly to pay off $1,000 Visa balance within 30 days by making a $250 payment every week for the next 4 weeks. Your goal is now specific with the actual dollar value that you want to have paid off. It's measurable, giving you the 30-day period to track your progress. It's achievable by making a $250 payment every week. It's realistic, as $250 a week is not an absurd amount of money, and timely, as you only have 30 days to complete the goal. When setting these goals, be sure to reference the budget you created earlier. Knowing how much money you'll have to put towards these financial goals will also give you a realistic outlook on how much you can tackle at once or how long they'll take you to complete. Run all of the numbers for each of your goals, set deadlines and mini milestones throughout the year, and build out a complete plan. Breaking your major goals into smaller chunks will make the big goals feel a lot more achievable, while setting mini milestones will give you moments of celebration along the way to keep you motivated. Set everything up. Now that you've got a detailed plan outlining what it is you'd like to accomplish and when you want to accomplish it, it's time to automate as much as you can. Setting up a budgeting app to track your spending and savings and automatic withdrawals from your bank will allow you to make like George Foreman and set it and forget it. Using a budgeting app like YNAB is a no-brainer. It gives you an easy-to-follow interface where you can see how much you've already spent and what you have left for the rest of the month. This will be the tool that saves you from overspending. Connecting your bank info to the app refines the process even further, as all of your transactions will be automatically updated, keeping you from inputting your purchases manually. Next, you'll want to set up automatic withdrawals from your checking account. Since you know what you can afford and have established a structured payment plan, simply have your bank make the payments for you automatically. This is an important step here, and one that shouldn't be skipped. It's all too easy to become distracted and lose sight of the goal you set at the beginning of the year. Maybe it's the music festival this summer that you really want to go to, or the release of some limited edition Yeezys. You've been doing really well so far and totally deserve it, right? Don't fall victim to this. Keep your eyes on the prize, and remember, you've set up mini celebrations along the way to keep your spirits high. Set your focus on one of those celebrations instead of those overpriced sneakers that will inevitably bring with them buyer's remorse. Track your progress. Now you have a set of goals you'd like to achieve, an action plan to help you get there, and automation doing as much of the work for you as possible. Things are looking pretty good. Kudos. Now comes the time to check in periodically and see how your goals are taking shape. As mentioned in the Make a Plan section of this podcast, it's a good idea to break your major goals into smaller, more manageable chunks. Your goals might seem pretty big, and when you first set them, it's not uncommon to feel as though they're impossible. By breaking those larger goals into smaller chunks, and those smaller chunks into actionable steps, you're able to spread the work out evenly across the month to help ensure that you're staying on track. It also helps you realize that your major goal isn't all that major at all. I like to check in on my budget once a week and then double check each of my goals once a month. The weekly budget check is to ensure all of the purchases being made are going into the app and gives me a warning if I'm getting too close to overspending. The monthly goal checkups are a way to make sure I've completed each of the steps I had outlined the month before. It also gives me a chance to look into the next month and set my next group of steps. Use these frequent checkups to not only ensure you're staying on track, but to celebrate along the way. Your motivation in the beginning will be strong, but it won't take too long before you begin to feel the pull to return to your old spending ways. Be sure to set goal milestones and that you celebrate when you reach them. For example, if your goal is to save a $5,000 emergency fund in 5 months, then maybe you can go out for dinner for every $1,000 saved. Or you can split the goal in half and celebrate at the $2,500 mark, and once you've reached the full goal of $5,000. However you choose to break it down is up to you. Expect the unexpected. As always, you're bound to hit a couple roadblocks along the way. This is inevitable. Being prepared for them is super important in making sure you don't fall behind on your goals, or even worse, get derailed completely. Some ways to help avoid this problem is to factor in a slight buffer when you are initially setting your goals. Say, for example, you can afford to put $1,000 away every month. If you dropped that number to $900 and left that $100 buffer, it might be the difference you need in actually achieving your goals. An emergency fund is another great way to mitigate your risk. I'm a strong believer in setting up an emergency fund first, then developing a plan to accelerate debt repayment or boost your savings. Every now and then, you'll get absolutely wiped out. Similar to what happened to Jess and I in the summer. We had 2 dead trees that needed to be removed, our air conditioner crapped out, and our dog needed knee surgery. This all happened in just 45 days and almost completely cleaned out our accounts. We were in the process of building our emergency fund up to the 3-month minimum before tackling the little bit of student debt Jess still had. Needless to say, everything came to a halt. Thankfully, we had already banked a few grand and had some savings in each of our TFSAs, which covered the cost of everything. It became abundantly clear just how important an emergency fund is. Since then, we've saved just over $8,000 in our emergency fund and are now ready to double down on the student debt that's left. I give this example not to scare you, but to help you realize that major expenses can and will arise, and being ready for them is the difference between coming out on top or being swallowed up by debt. In closing, it's always a good idea to plan your financial goals for the year ahead. Think of it as breaking up your life's overall financial goals into smaller, more manageable chunks. It will help you take a step back and get a clear picture of where you currently stand financially and what steps you need to take to ensure you finish ahead. As always, you can head on over to wealthmillennial.net/blog to read the full article with all the links and resources mentioned. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the love. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Wealth and Millennial. The more millennials we can help when it comes to personal finance, the better off we'll all be.
This has been an Evoke Media podcast.